Hi, everybody. So welcome to, this is a weekly support for people who are contemplating going through and post-divorce. And every week what we try to do is tackle a different topic. And so what we're tackling today is real estate and dealing with your divorce. So my name's Catherine Blake. I'm a certified divorce coach for those who don't know out there. And I work with people who are contemplating, going through, and post-divorce. And so today we have a very special guest who's joined us. This is Heather Rogers, and I got to say, she is one of those people that when you meet somebody, they're just heart-centered and they're just so full of positive energy. And as soon as I met her, I knew she had to be part of the team. And she really understands divorce. And so I'm not going to share much about her story. I'll let her introduce herself. But she's such an asset to our team, and she's here to help you as well. So we did get some questions. So thank you, viewers who did write those in. That helps a ton. And if you're watching, I'll certainly keep track of the screen. If we see any other questions that come up, we will answer them as best as we can. So hi. So we're seeing you guys who are just joining now. So thank you for being here. Okay. So do you want to introduce yourself so people know who you are?
I am Heather Rogers. I work with Bentley's Real Estate in Newburyport. We do have offices in Andover and Newburyport. So I do find myself up and down the Merrimack Valley, though I am more centered in the Newburyport area, but working all over. And I'm also divorced, so I've gone through this. I did buy my own home post-divorce and before I went into real estate, and I do think that that sort of perpetuated this career. And I really, I've enjoyed my career, but I actually enjoyed this very much, helping people out and getting everybody back on 2 feet and deciding whether or not your home is the right place for you to stay post-divorce. Sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Absolutely. So I think you're able to, I think both of us are able to take some difficult situations that we have dealt with in life, dealing with divorce, and turn around and use it for good, because we want to help people avoid any mistakes that we've made, and we want to make the process of the transition as easy for you as we can. So I think I'm going to move on. Seeing some people are joining. So hi, everyone. I know. We're both kind of blind. So if you see us squinting and looking very closely, it's because neither of us can read what's going on. So the first question is, so it's hard because when you get these questions online too, I just want people to know that we don't always know all the details of the situation. So I'm literally just taking the question as it comes to me, and that's it. So we're going to answer them as best as we can. Real estate is a very complex topic. So we'll see what we can do here, because the first question that we have, and I will say this is the question that I get asked a lot as a divorce coach, is should I fight through the divorce to keep my house?
And it's a tricky one, because you have emotional, you have your kids are emotional, you're emotional, you have these attachments to the house. So your first inclination may be that you want to fight for that house, especially if perhaps you're not the one who is initiating the divorce. You might think, oh, I want to fight for this and keep this. You need to really think about it objectively if you can, and look at what it takes to maintain a home. The thought process is that, a few years later, you might change your mind, and have you been maintaining it so that you've increased in value? Or if it was too much for you and you got in over your head, could you have lost value? So would this actually be the time that you would want to sell? Only you can answer that question. You need to look at your network of your friends and family that you have very local to you, that you could call on for help, depending on the relationship you have with your soon-to-be ex-spouse or your ex-spouse. If that person is someone who will gladly come over and help you, that might lean you towards keeping the house. If that situation is not going to work out that way, and you don't have a great network, that might encourage you to move on to something that's easier to maintain. It is unique situation to situation, but it does require objectivity in your decision making for sure.
Absolutely. And so I think when people do get in trouble, one of the things that happen is the attorneys look at the parties and say, oh, no, the house is yours. You should be in the house. You're watching the kids the majority of the time. But the attorneys actually don't necessarily know the whole financial picture. And they also might not even know your house. So they don't even really truly know if that's a good situation for you. I mean, I know me personally, I rent. There's no shame in renting. I
Mhm.
don't have to plow. I don't have to mow. I don't have to
I have to shovel. I mow my lawn.
and for
I would
me,
rather do that.
that's actually better because I didn't want to, have to be
Yeah.
burdened by that as a single mom.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I hope that kind of answers
Yeah.
some of that question.
Mhm.
So we'll move on. I'm just seeing if there's, hi
I can't
Lisa,
read 'em.
we have Lisa there. So the next question that we received is, how do I know if the buyout offer that my ex is offering me through their attorney is fair?
You don't. So what I would suggest is that you bring in a real estate agent to do what's called a CMA. It's a comparative market analysis. They're going to tell you what your home is worth that day in the current market conditions in the town that you live in. If your number is largely different than your ex's number or soon to be ex's number, you can bring in another agent and see where that lines up. Maybe out of three, who's 2 to 3 and who's closer. But that is something that you should do your homework on. I would not just accept a number at face value. The best case scenario is your CMA comes out exactly where your ex wants to buy you out and it's a happy situation. But if it's not, educate yourself. Agents are always willing to do a complimentary CMA. For them, it's their first opportunity to meet a potential new listing for down the road or whenever, and to establish a relationship. So they're very, very happy to help you out with that, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay, so we move on to the next
Yeah.
question. So the next question is, what questions should I ask a potential agent?
First, you want to find out how you want to do the CMA again. So you need to have your CMA in order to know the value, the projected value your home is worth in the market. And then you want to ask your agent how well are homes in that particular price point doing in the current marketplace? Because even though the market is doing very well, it's not doing very well in every single price point across the board. So you want to find out in my community, if my house is worth X, how many days on market on average is it taking to put those houses under agreement? Because that's going to help you plan your exit in terms of where you may be going. And just overall, what's going on in the marketplace. It helps you to wrap your head around. There's markets like in our area, West Newbury and Groveland are slower moving markets generally than say Newburyport. So you want to know that because you don't want to have false expectations. If your friend has a house in Newburyport, they're under agreement in 2 days, and you're in West Newbury, and on average it takes 40 days. That's good information for you to have so that you're not discouraged and you're properly planning. Merging sort of two of these questions, I think this kind of brings us also into other things that your agent can help you do. I would certainly ask your agent, depending on the relationship you have with your soon-to-be ex, if they've worked in a divorce scenario, especially if the relationship
We
is
have
not.
people digging in. Sorry.
A little distracted. It's hard. Especially if the relationship is one of struggle. I've worked with somebody very, very recently where they don't get along and they're not both living in a house, in 2 separate locations, and I have to communicate with them very differently. Though that being said, closets are full of clothing, the house is fully furnished. It looks like people live in that house, and that is actually going to increase the value because you will look less negotiable. You won't look like you're going through a divorce, which a buying agent or buyer could see as a weakness and could try to negotiate more heavily on. So I think I'm kind
It's
of
just crazy
going in circles
because
here
that's
because I'm
not
thinking
something
about.
that I ever thought about or
Yeah.
knew about. So I know Heather works with, if there's the closet's half full or there's no pictures in the
Sure.
house, you encourage the clients to.
As a buyer's
Bring it,
agent,
yeah.
I've been in situations where I've walked into a house and I've said to my buyer, this is a divorce. So let's get the story on this to the best that we can. The selling agent is often not going to disclose very much, nor should they. So therefore, we have to create our own little story. We say, okay, so there's only one closet full of clothes. I don't see any briefcases. I don't see any men's shoes. I think this house might be a little bit more negotiable because I'm sure these people want to move on with their lives. That's not the signal that you want to send. So as a listing agent, my job is to help you either bring contents back into the home or leave contents in the home, make that home look like it is inhabited right now by both spouses.
And so I had a client who actually had a situation where the client or the soon-to-be ex posted on Facebook that they were going through a divorce and were going to be selling the house. And yeah, so,
not a good idea. Right. Not a good idea. Let's not make it public knowledge.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's something I didn't even realize any of that stuff. So
you'd be surprised on Facebook when you want it to be successful, how well sharing things on Facebook can lead to quicker home sale transactions, bidding wars, things like that, because people are just trying to benefit one another. In that scenario, say somebody took that post and tagged somebody that they knew wanted to buy in that community, they could write a comment that says something like, hey, looks like you could get a deal here. That will ruin the opportunity for you to get the most that you can for your money. So you keep that under wraps, regardless of what your friends and family know. Just keep it off of social media, keep it out of the public eye, because it's the people that we don't know that we don't want them to find that out.
right, absolutely. So okay,
Okay.
so we're doing good.
Getting there.
So I mean, I know this. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, like how to
Yeah.
handle the process
Yep.
when the couple has a hard time speaking to each other?
First of all, initiating a relationship between two soon-to-be ex-spouses, what I would say first is, and this comes out of personal experience, and I think you can probably attest to this too, that communication and the relationship can be a roller coaster. So even if we're in a relationship between listing agent and sellers, it might be a 60, 90, 120-day relationship. There could be a lot of roller coaster rides that go on, especially because home selling is an emotional experience to begin with. And now we're adding layers of divorce, layers of animosity, things like that. So a recent situation I had was I went on a listing appointment that I was called in on, and I met with one spouse in the house, and we went through everything, and I explained all my marketing, and I explained the way that I would be promoting this house. And I knew that it was a divorce. I did not know if they both were living there. I didn't know anything about that scenario when I went in. And as I finished my conversations with her, she said, great, now if you could just go, and she gave me a new address, like go to him and explain all of this to him. We actually won't communicate this between the two of us. And I thought, okay, great. Went and did it, and it was really an effective way for us to all be communicating. We're all on the same page. They don't have to see one another. They don't have to be in the same room. And then fast forward, as the listing agreement was signed, there was some things that needed to be done in the house. So we created a schedule, and we made time allotments where one spouse would show up and do what they had to do, and the other spouse would show up and do what they had to do. And everything went very smoothly. It's very amicable between the three of us. And I just had to learn how to communicate between the two of them to make them feel more comfortable. That being said, the divorce is very friendly, and everyone can sit on the couch and we can have a conversation together. So it's all what works for the couple.
But isn't it amazing that Heather does that? Like gives them a task list with times. Like I just
Friday night from 5 to 7, you go in.
That's awesome, because I don't think everybody does.
But it works.
Yeah,
it works.
Yep.
So do what works. And the objective is to do what's going to make them the most money in the end, because they're splitting these proceeds. So they're both going to work their fair share in theory, and you hope, and they do, because there's money on the table, and who wants to leave money on the table?
Right, absolutely.
Nobody.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
So what do we always talk about? Like, as a divorce coach, I'm always helping people keep their emotions in check and think logically, because getting through divorce really, you kind of have to be in a business mindset to be making the best decisions.
It is.
For yourself.
It's a transaction.
It's a transaction. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So and that's
An
hard
emotional
to remember. That's why I'm here. So so we actually had a couple of people chime in.
Okay.
So let's go
Which I
with
can't
this
read
one. Hi everyone. What is your general sense of the market now?
So the general sense of the market is that there are far more buyers than sellers. So it's still a seller's market. That being said, we have to be really careful when we're in a divorce home scenario, because sometimes / often a divorce home has been neglected because maybe people were trying to work on the relationship, figure the relationship out. They're trying to take care of their children, make their children feel safe. And the last thing I think about is the house for a period of time that could be years, it could be months. And so sometimes when you walk into a soon-to-be divorced or recently divorced home, it may be in more disrepair than another home. So somebody might have a false sense of value, and it needs to be determined if they have the finances, first of all, to make improvements, because sometimes they don't, depending on where they're at in that divorce process. And if they don't, they may see that they're selling lower than they expected, even though the market is hot. I've had that happen, and it's unfortunate, but the objective still has to be met, that if you need to get out of that home, we need to get out at the highest price possible. But if we go in overpriced, you're going to sit on the market for longer, and that's going to be more painful and more emotional, especially between the two parties.
Absolutely.
So it's a different formula with divorce. If you walk in and the house looks amazing and perfect, then yeah, you're going to get your top dollar in this market right now. So it's good.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So, okay, so we have a couple more questions. So certainly chime in. We're planning on this being about a half hour. So we have about another 10, 15 minutes. The question is, my wife has to refinance the house in her name, but she has no work history or income other than child support.
So I had my own sense on this through experience, but I also reached out to two lenders today. I reached out to Nate Carmen. If you're watching, Nate, I told you to.
Nate.
Oh, you do? From Harbor One Mortgage?
Well, online.
Yeah.
Hi, Nate.
Nate's a good sharer of like my listings and things like that too.
Yes,
Nate's good.
okay.
He's active on Facebook. So
Yes,
that's good.
he is right.
And Anna Mako is from the Institution for Savings, and they have two different lending houses altogether. So I wanted to get two different perspectives, and I actually got the same answer, which was great. So that meant that it was just an easier scenario to answer for people in general. Child support is viewed as income. It's non-taxable income, but it is viewed as income. So in a divorce, they're going to take the divorce decree, which from experience, actually, this is what I did. When I bought my house, I had to submit my divorce decree with my purchase and sale. And so they wanted to see what I was receiving at the time in child support, what my income was, and then they use that as my pre-qual. If there is no income and the child support is enough that they can manage the payments, then they will get an approval. Sometimes it's a year of child support. Sometimes it's up to 3 years of child support.
Oh, wow.
The lending institution might view it as self-employment. So anytime somebody becomes newly self-employed, there's a 24 to 36 month window, depending on the level of self-employment, what the job is, how supported it is, and where you previously came from your career. So child support is viewed on that sort of a scale as if you're self-employed. If there's already a history of child support, that helps tremendously because that's like a job history and it's in the divorce decree. So if your ex is paying on time every month and has been for 12 to 24 months, that's going to help in a refinance or a pre-qual. A refinance and a pre-qual are viewed very similarly because it's still handling a mortgage.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want to move on to the next one? I'm just seeing. So the next one is Zillow says my property is worth way more than what the appraiser said. Is there anything I can do about that?
So Zillow is a real estate agent's best friend and frenemy at times because the Zestimate is well known to be inaccurate. And in a normal listing appointment, we have to debunk the Zestimate quite often because Zillow doesn't get into your home. So Zillow is basing it on bedroom count, square footage, neighborhood, zip code, things like that. But there's a disparity between, the nicer kitchen, the more dated kitchen, how the condition of the flooring is, things that would definitely increase or decrease value. So your Zestimate is something that the consumers will look at. I did recently pull his estimate up quite a bit. So there was somebody who had a newer construction home. This was about a week ago, and his estimate was $550, and I had him on the market for about $800, which is more close to his value. And I pulled his estimate up to $769. That doesn't happen often. I had to support documents. I had to really explain to Zillow why I felt like it had to be higher, and we got it up, which was great. That does not happen often. So we don't worry so much about the Zestimate. We worry more about the comps. And the comps are what's in MLS, what the other agents are saying, and what the consumer is seeing on Zillow for sale. So the Zestimate is there. It's a hovering number. If it lines up well, great. If it doesn't, we have other ways to get around that, and the market shows us that.
So look, Nate just got on.
Oh, hey, Nate. How you doing?
Hi, Nate.
Did you like what we said?
Yes, Nate can help you guys as well. Are we good? Give us a thumbs up if we're good, right?
We represented you well.
Yeah, see, we're giving, look, we also have Bentley glasses. We thought this was very interesting.
Water.
Okay, so somebody, it's the time. So one of the things, I'm trying to think of how I can formulate this in a question that makes sense. So one of the things I think that I see often in my office is somebody comes in and they say, I want to keep the house, and they're going through their financial forms, but they've never actually budgeted
Mhm.
So what things do you include? So I know there's obviously the budget of the mortgage payment, but
Mhm.
what other things should be included in there when people
So-
think about how much they can afford
Yeah.
post-divorce?
So most mortgage payments will include your taxes. That's if, and if they don't, that's something you actually want to have happen going forward because you don't want a quarterly bill out of
Right.
thin air that you're not planning for. So if you were to refinance or buy a new house and divorce, you would want to get your taxes in your mortgage payment. Some mortgage payments can also include your homeowner's insurance. If you're tightly budgeted, I would recommend that because now you're hitting three big expenses in
At
one,
once.
one monthly bill. So you can think to yourself, okay, so I've got my overhead covered, my mandatory homeowner's insurance based on my mortgage, and my taxes are covered.
Gotcha. Okay.
Then you obviously have to account for all your utilities. You also want to have a repairs budget. Being on my own, there's a seller I have right now. She's on her own too. And one of the things her and I were laughing about during my listing appointment was how hard it is to get somebody to come help us because the handymans don't want to do the small jobs. And sometimes you burn out your friends and family and you do learn how to use a hammer and screwdriver and things by your own self, but you can't hold something and nail it in. And there's things you just can't do. So I would actually have a handyman's expense where you can, quarterly plow through a few things that need to be done because homes always need small things, if not big things, to be taken care of.
So I actually kept my house post-divorce. I've been divorced for almost 11 years, and then I ended up selling it 7 years later. And part of it was because there were so many things that were falling apart on the house that I did not budget for. And I always tell the story of we had a winter where it was just snow, and tons of snow. And I was shoveling and shoveling and shoveling. There was so much snow that my snowblower was snowed into my shed and I couldn't get it out. And I remember one man in my neighborhood came over and he said, I'll help you out. So he helped me shovel for about 10 minutes and he says, now you owe me a date. And I was like, you know what? I am never asking for help from anybody. I'm going to do it all on my own. I'm going to sell this house and rent.
So I do have someone who helps me sometimes. And our arrangement is beer and steak tips.
Yeah, well, see, but
Super clean.
I
give a case of beer.
It's okay to need help. It's literally okay to need help, right? And I think anything post divorce you need help of other moms, other single moms, and a community. And that's one of the things about Vesta is we have social events, and so you don't feel like you're alone out there dealing with it all. So do you have any kind of last words? Is there any questions? We have a couple more minutes. I'm just seeing if there's people join. Hi, Jen. Oh, I'm so happy you guys all joined. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You guys don't have any
people,
questions. I'm so surprised.
I love that. I love seeing how many people are on here, though.
But do you think there's any, like, so somebody was thinking about going through divorce and they're, and they're dealing with the possibility of having to sell the family home or what?
I think a few things are just take a deep breath because I think sometimes people think that everything has to go very quickly and it doesn't. I think, lining up your support system and getting the most information you can ease your mind. One of the things that we talked about, or I talked about a few weeks ago when we were in here, is that one of the techniques that I used going through my divorce and moving into my house and everything was so overwhelming that I taught myself how to pretend I had a box in my hand and I put everything in the box and I just took one thing out at a time. And if it was related to my children and I felt like they needed the most attention, I dealt with that and I put the lid on until that was solved. And then I took something else out of the box. And I still sort of live that way, compartmentalized probably.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Dealing with the things that are most important. And I think that you learn long-term that a lot of things aren't that important. And when you can figure that out too.
Yeah. So it's so funny. I love that. I love using visuals. So one of the things I tell my clients is if you're a runner, although I haven't been running much because I'm getting older, but and you're running and you're looking up at the top of the hill and you're like, I got to get up on that top of the hill. I got to get up. You actually get more winded and tired. If you actually look down in front of you and you focus one step at a time, you get up to the hill surprisingly quicker. And I think getting through the divorce process is like that, right? It's like I can only deal with one topic at a time, and that's okay.
Yeah, that is okay.
Divorce is a process. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And this is, your house, your shelter is a big part of getting through that. So I always say, slow down, think about your decisions, weigh out all your options. There's no rush to make a decision, emotionally gut reacting right away. So
because in a lot of divorces, the house can be handled as like a clause of longevity, in so many months this should happen. It doesn't
Right.
have to be that, we're
It's right
finalizing
away.
our divorce and therefore, because you may want your children to adjust, you may want to adjust. I mean, there's so much going on that could be one of the things in the box. One of the things could be the house,
Right.
right? It
Absolutely.
doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and I've
all at
seen that in a
once.
lot of agreements.
Mhm.
People might, the agreement might say in 2 years,
Mhm.
we're going to sell the home so the
Mhm.
kids can move from elementary to middle school. And so it's being creative and figuring out which makes the most sense for your family and for your children, and for
Sure.
your future.
Yeah, for sure.
So I guess that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I love this woman, by the way. I can't tell you how much I love her. And she's so great with people. She's one of those like heart-centered people. That's why I love working with her. So I do want to invite you, invite you to what we're going to do next week is it's actually going to be just me. And I'm going to talk to you a lot about dealing with high conflict personalities going through and post-divorce. I know we use the word narcissism a lot. It's like the word du jour that's out there. So certainly feel free to PM me your questions, your stories, your comments, and I'll advertise when we'll be doing that. It's a really tricky subject. I see it in my office all the time. I've dealt with it personally. So I want to give you some guidelines and some help on how to help you get through that. So.
Sounds good.
All right. So I hope you guys are all having a great summer, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.